Hello, hello. It's a little slow getting connected today. Hello, hello. Anyway, hopefully we've started. Um, yeah, I was having a little bit of trouble getting everything to show up and come on. So, oh, there you are, Haddock. Yeah, it's just one of the. Well, it was being very strange for some reason. I don't know. It's like last night for a while my internet was down and I had to well, it wasn't the internet, it was the connection and things were going wonky and I was just like, not again. I live on the internet. Fix that in post. Ooh, you betcha. Hey, I got some more questions from my YouTube fan, which I think I'd go through if you guys don't mind, because it's I'm just tickled to have an actual YouTube fan. You know how it goes. um, Let me find the questions. It was somewhere. Oh, I'm on the wrong computer. Hold on. I have too many computers these days. But it helps me keep things separate without having to constantly log in and out of things, which I'm far too lazy about. I'd rather switch computers than than deal with trying to remember all of my passwords. Okay. The question was, and that's driving me crazy too. I've got a thumb drive stuck in the back of my hard drive that keeps coming on and coming off again, and it's like, really? Really? You're gonna interrupt me constantly for this stupid noise telling me that I'm here? No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm here. It's like, why is it having these issues? And it's hard to reach to unplug, so I'm lazy. Okay, so, several questions. First question was, why do I use the high pass filter on all the voices? Doesn't it make the voices sound like they're on the radio or something? Let's take a sample here. This is something that's a good idea to see, or hear, I should say, why things are done. And so if I take, say, if I take a random voice or a relatively random voice, not that one. If I take a relatively random voice, what I'd actually like is one of the ones recorded in my place, because then I know that they haven't already been dealt with at all. Well, we'll go with Constable Fields. Okay, so we take this voice because I know he's we. If you listen to, we'll save this first part where there's a lot of talking. We'll work with that. First thing, I always change everything to mono, and I think if you go look at my stereo footstep thing, you'll see where my issues with stereo versus mono come from. Quite apart from the fact that mono just looks cleaner on the screen when you've got many bands of things. But
Found
here,
someone who might identify the deceased, sir. No, sir, I thought, um,
okay, so he's got a fairly relatively deep voice. So now, just as a sample, let's take this bunch, and here's what we're gonna do with the high pass filter. Now, I turn on the high pass filter and I say I do 300. 300 is my default. You used to be able to change the roll off to 3, which seemed to do something different, but you can't anymore. 6 is the lowest number you can get here. You always want to make sure you've got the lowest number. So I run a 300 on it. Now you can see that it has reduced a little bit,
found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
but it doesn't sound too different. It sounds more like he's taken half a step back from you. Hi, Robbins. Hi, David. that the voice is taken a little step back. It's a little bit distant. It's not right in your ear anymore. And let's, play that again. If I solo this one.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
And the other way.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
See, it just takes out a bit of that rumble, but the other thing it takes out is the underlying buzz of noise that we usually have when recording, because you've got computer sounds or you've got the electricity in the walls or whatever. Your room tone a lot of times has a sort of a buzz underneath to it. So, for instance, if I took a chunk of room tone here, this one would go, it's roughly at 7 and 7.6 is how loud the room tone is. If I volume it up, it would look like that. But after doing the high pass filter, if I volumed this one up, it would look like that. It's a slight difference there too. You're getting the buzz has the general buzz in the middle here has changed dramatically because it's been brought down. It's been reduced some. And so what that does is it allows, it makes the noise reduction, which I always do after the high pass filter, slightly easier because it's already taken out a slice of all the noise. Now, the ongoing part of the question was, does it make them sound like they're on the radio? Well, you run a high pass filter at a low enough number.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
And it doesn't. It sounds like he's taken a step away. He's not right in my ear anymore. He's a little bit away. Now, if I take this and I run a high pass filter at 4,000, then it takes out a lot of the low notes. This is when you start sounding like it's on a radio.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
So, no. Stupid thing.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
So, and then I volumed up, obviously, to compensate because so much of the low notes were taken out. But, you start hearing the dramatic difference in the sound as you go through these different steps. So if I did this, whoops, you could hear the difference between normal.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
Do you see what I mean? So this is why, this is how you use a high pass filter is, you've got without.
Found someone.
Then,
found someone who might identify the deceased,
and then
sir.
all the way to
no,
4,000. Now, the higher the number in the high pass filter, the more is being taken out. And the reason why is because a high pass filter lets the high notes go through. So you're basically cutting off everything below the number that you choose. Oh, I am so sick of this thumb drive. Jeez Louise. Hold on a moment. You stupid, lazy, fucking pie. It keeps going, I'm here. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm here. No, I'm not. And popping into my screen. Oh, it was so frustrating. Sorry, it's really awkward bending over the table trying to reach the stupid thing below. It's just like, ugh. Anyway, sorry. I would edit that in post, but I don't know how to edit videos yet. That's on my list. Anyway, so I'm hoping that this kind of shows you in demonstrably what the high pass filter is and why I do this. Now, the nice thing with this, with using the low level that I use. Now, this is a lot of the stuff that I do. I learned to do by trial and error, but this is one thing that I was actually told to do by an actual sound engineer type person who talked the talk and knew what he was doing. And one of the reasons was because, we do have, unless you have perfect recording settings, we always do have that low buzz of electricity and electronics in every recording, if nothing else from the computer that you're recording on, or the machinery that you're recording on of whatever kind it is. And therefore, this low high pass filter taking off just a tiny slice of the lowest sound is actually very handy, and it also evens out all the voices to some degree, so that as you're, when you get them, they all sound like they're at a similar distance from the mic or whatever. Obviously, when I'm doing this, you'll hear me talk a lot about how in this particular series that Gerald sounds like he's already been high pass filtered. And if we listen to, you know
If he's a gentleman, as is assumed, then
there's this is Constable Fields, but if we pull Gerald in, he does sound like he's high pass filtered, which is kind of annoying. I tell people not to clean their own tracks for that very reason, because I really do prefer to do all the cleaning so that it's all consistent. But that doesn't always happen. People don't always listen to me, and sometimes it's just got to do with how I can't find Gerald's original tracks. This is one where all the voices are kind of messed up, but um, because sometimes it's just in how they record to start with that they just don't get some of the low notes, and again, this was all recorded so many years ago. Also, that affects some of this. I mean, it's not going to degrade over time because computer files don't do that, luckily. But, people's recording setups might be better now, etc. Now, by contrast, if we talk about a low pass filter, now the high pass filter shaves off the low notes. Now, one thing, the way I look at it, I like using this as the waveform. If you look at different ways to look at your files, now, like a spectrogram or something, I look at these and go, ooh, pretty, scary, go away, I'm so used to the waveform, I don't do it any other way. But, for instance, I'm assuming if you used a spectrogram and you did a high pass, it would change some different way. But in a waveform, it kind of symmetricalizes, imposes symmetry on it, for at least for my voice. But, so I can sometimes tell just by looking at it whether or not I've high pass filtered it. Not for somebody else's voice so much. Because what it's taking out is something kind of at the center. It's not taking out the notes. And this is not a high notes up here, low notes down here kind of situation. It's something else entirely. But yeah, taking out all the low notes evens things out so they sound more consistent. Now, and a 300 is really low. I mean, even 500, which I do for outdoor scenes, is still quite low because the scale you're looking at goes from 1 to 5,000. 5,000 is everything. If I ran a high pass filter here and I went 5,000, you know,
found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
It's not really voluming it down. What it's doing is taking out so much of the sound that it seems like it's voluming.
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir.
But even then, I mean, if you want to go to full on the radio, sometimes you have to run it a couple times. So yeah, using numbers like the 300 and 200 for, if you want to keep the lowest low notes in a voice, and like I said, I was taught to do this by a sound engineer person. Now, the low pass filter, by comparison, cuts out the high notes, and so what it does is if we did this, and I run the low pass, whoops, not amplifying it. I run a low pass filter, for instance, to take out sharpness, like when we've got noises that are kind of. I'm not. I don't have the words all the time, but if things sound too sharp, if you've got, like bells or something, or metal noises that are just too pointy, um, and with a low pass filter, the higher you run it at, uh, the less impact it has. I wanted to make sure I got that right. The lower you run it at, the more impact it has. So if I go 4,000 on this, it's because while the high pass filter is cutting out the bottom notes, so the lower the number is, the less is being cut out. The low pass filter is cutting out high notes, so the higher number it is, the less is included. I hope that makes sense. But so if I run this at 4,000,
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir. Found someone who might.
It doesn't have a lot of impact on his voice at all because it's a primarily a low voice to start with. But if I pull in something like a sound effect, like let's see, let's get up. Whoops, I went too far. Go into the FX and pull out. Well, let's go with the ceramic bowl. Okay. Okay. Even this isn't that much, but if I ran the low pass filter, that's not the right thing to do. Let's see. I gotta find another. Well, let's try this one. Yeah, we got a lot of high pointy noises on this, kind of. So, first off, I would always make it. The reason I always make it go from stereo to mono is partly very much described in my short video on stereo footsteps, but also just because it's more consistent as well if everything you're working with is one way or the other. And it's better to make it mono because you can't make everything stereo, at least unless you have everything stereo to begin with, and it's just awkward. When I'm going to use 1,000 as more of a sound. Now you can see there's a difference. First, let's listen to this. Now listen. You see, it takes out the higher noises. Yeah, well, the high pass, if you put a high number in, it will get stronger. If a low pass, you put a low number in, it will get stronger. It will do more. I know I harp on it because it took me forever to sort out which was which. But, do you hear this difference here? If, we've got the snappy noises right in your face, and then a little bit more subdued. It's not drawing as much attention to itself because we took out those higher noises. Ultimately, the low pass filter is what I use ultimately to make things sound like, for instance, they're behind a door. So if I used a low pass filter with a very low number, I'll go to 500 here. Then
Found someone who might identify the deceased, sir. No, sir, I thought.
See, you're keeping the low notes, so it sounds like you're like listening through a door, or you're away somehow. And those two functions alone are super useful, but also, you got to use them in moderation. I'll use a light low pass filter sometimes to take the edge off a sound effect or a voice that's too sharp. I don't have a better word than sharp. Sorry. It's not even treble necessarily. I can hear it, but I can't describe it. But and then use the high pass filter to take out things that are too low. Okay, I hope I've beat a high pass filter to death by this point. Um, the next question is, I see you use pop mute and amplify and pop mute again for your initial audio editing, but many times I've seen other people use a combination of compressor, normalize, and equalization. How come I do not use those? Okay, now this is uh did you miss do you want me to do more high pass filter, Haddock? Have I not beat it to death? um Okay, well, I'm going to go on. The next question, as I said, was why do I use pop mute and amplification rather than use a compressor or a normalization? And this is where I have to point out again, I am not technically trained. I'm somebody who learned a lot of this stuff through trial and error. And many of my experiences happened in very past versions of Audacity. So I don't know if they have changed or fixed or if I was doing it wrong or whatever, because I learned a lot of this stuff, a decade ago, and they've changed a lot since then, but I haven't, because once I found something that worked, why keep reinventing the wheel? And my problem with normalization and compression functions is a lot of times, back then, and I do have to keep putting that caveat in so that people aren't like, well, now it works. It's like, well, yeah, it might, but I haven't had any incentive to go look at it because I found something that works for me. What a lot of those would do is to even out the sound in, say, a line like this. It would bring down the highest, the loudest parts, but it would also bring up the quietest parts, so it was compressing them together, and it wouldn't always do it evenly. And because it would be, oh well, this part's quiet, so this part's going to come up by X amount, while this part's less quiet and is going to come up by slightly less, and this part's coming down and this part's coming up, and so you'd end up with this weirdly choppy sound. And and there probably were settings I didn't understand, and there probably were other things, but for me it became very simple to go, instead of having this irregularly raised portion, to just go, oh look, um here we've got some tall notes, and I was actually literally going through and finding the high points and reducing them sometimes, and got frustrated with that, which is why I ended up finding out about pop mute, because I inquired if there was anything like that. And, this is why I love pop mute, because all it does is it takes the highest points, it finds them, and it brings them down. And you can define it. And it doesn't affect any of the baseline volume at all. It doesn't bring it up, it doesn't bring it down, it doesn't do anything. And you can't really hear the difference until you go really drastic. And that's part of what makes it so great, is that, here, okay, let's take this. I'm trying to find something where there's very loud things in among other things so that I can use it as an example. Well, like this here. Okay, well, that looks horrible if I make it that big. But here, we've got this loud spot in the middle of this sentence. We hear,
Is a nest of anarchy.
and if you think about it, it's really not loud. I mean, voices just go up and down like this, but my options, if I wanted to volume up the baseline of it, is go that high, because that high point reaches this number. Okay, and that's as high as I can go. Or volume it up and let that go outside the edge and get clipped off, which is generally a bad idea. You don't want clipping. Or to have to manually highlight all these little bits and take them up some more. So, and leave that out. Which is really slow and tedious, trust me. So I found it easier to bring the points down. And this is not clipped off. not like it would be if I went outside outside the margins. This it doesn't.
Is a nest of Anakin.
It's just been brought down a little bit.
Is a nest of Anakin.
And as long as the computer is doing it and bringing down just the ones that are louder, you really don't get too much difference from it. Ah, poop. I mean, the ear isn't going to hear too.
Is a nest of Anakin.
You know, you're not.
Is a nest of Anakin.
It doesn't sound like it's quieter than anything else. You know, it doesn't start to sound like that. You know, I mean, here I can continue to bring everything
Is a
down,
nest of Anakin.
and it doesn't sound like it's in the volume. The volume doesn't sound like it's being altered in relation to the rest of the line, which is what I heard when I tried out things like normalization and compression. And as I said, they may be fixed by now, but all I needed was one time getting burned to go look for something else to use. And this works for me. It may be a I just brought a hatchet to a chainsaw kind of situation, but I can still, you know, cut wood with the best of them or something like that. And ultimately it gets me what I want, and it's not that many extra steps, and I have a better simple control over it. So there's that answer. um I think I'll save the other questions for another day so we can get on to other things. He had a couple more questions that I want to address, but I don't want to just make this the whole episode about them. But I hope that that's explained some of what I do. This is, you know, I could probably take and go explore and try out the compression function and see how it works and stuff. But you know what? I have something that works. I don't. I'm not. I'm not obsessed with getting perfect sound. I want reasonable sound. Yeah, overcompression does, and that's how I've found. That's why I went and found the pop mute. I mean, pop mute's function, its intended function, is to deal with, you know, when you pop. And the funny thing is, I find that when people actually pop, you know, the pop sound, the puh, that, you know, hits your mic and makes the big jaggedy stack, I find high pass filters work better on pops than pop mute actually does. I use pop mute for something else entirely. You know, I mean, I look at what the function does and find a use for it rather than necessarily just go with what everybody said. Oh, you watched the footsteps video? Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, I mean, I've really seen tracks like that, even though I had to construct that one to demonstrate it. And it is a very it's that's why I make my, because even though I'm making my effects and things mono, it doesn't mean that my stories come out not stereo. It's because I can move mono through the soundscape better than I can move stereo through the soundscape. And again, there may be other programs that do thrilling things and make it work. This is what I found works for me in Audacity. And everybody is totally welcome to go on and find other things that work for them. I'm just showing what works for me. Okay, so let's get on to a scene. Let's close up some of these extra boxes. Um, wait, oh, I thought I had something else open. Oh, that's right. My computer shut down last night for a bit. Can you use it for LP clicks and pops? Oh, for records. You probably can. I don't have anything like an LP track handy to demonstrate on. I would say, yeah, definitely, David. That footsteps are well, and they're not really off to one side or the other because they're so centered, that they really sound centered to the ears of the person walking. Um, for LP clicks and pops, yeah, I'd have to experiment with that a little bit. I know some people have good success with that when they're taking from records. I would see anytime you can isolate the click itself and see what you can do with each one individually. But I mean, because as long as they're tall, they're easy to find, if that makes sense. I mean, as long as they're more visible, they're going to be easier to individually try to deal with. Um, Mr. Brown. And, but yeah, it'd be real interesting to try that out. I haven't really done. Stop whatever you are doing, you stupid file. I was doing something that wasn't letting me open files. Everything's being weird today. It's being mean to me. Now I have to figure out where I put the new Mr. Brown download, because I had it open. I hate when the computer closes down on me for no stupid reason. Did I have it? Oh, there we go. But now I have to clean it again because I don't know where it was. Well, it's better than nothing. So actually, I might be in my recent files. You'd be surprised how little things show up in your recent files, because you go back to it and you're like, oh, I know I just had that open. And then you're like, oh, yeah, but I had this sound effect and this sound effect and that sound effect and this sound effect and this, every single one of them shows up in there. Okay, so general cleaning, Mr. Brown. I know I had clean.
And
he sounds.
been working more on making lenses for the Automator.
Yeah, he sounds pretty basic, but let's just see what kind of baseline sound we've got. Oh, that's not too bad. It looks like it's already been cleaned, is what I'm thinking here. And like I said, I ask people not to clean their own stuff, but, there are people who are really good at it, and there are people who just think they're good at it. And that's one reason I like to just clean it myself most of the time. And but this should be fine. I'm pretty sure he's already cleaned it, Let's see. I hate being in the middle because you can't really see how long it actually is. Oh, there we go, 5 seconds. And we'll get a noise profile. I'm playing really fast and loose today, but, the computer's been being weird, so I'm getting back at it. Okay.
Julie, this is Mr. Brown.
Oh, that's right. We were working with this. Definitely working with this.
Get down. Kiss myself.
Yeah, dude. You do you.
Oh, sorry. Different Mr. Brown, right?
Yeah.
All right. And here we go. Line 15.
Okay. So for the first scene with Mr. Brown. Now, oops. Now I have to go back to the other computer. La, 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 la. One is my YouTube computer, one is not. One is my writing computer, where I have the scripts. So, as I was trying to point out, when I'm doing, one of the things that I'm not I am not a um, perfectionist sound wise. I am get the sound to sound good and then be done. I'm not. I've never been one of those people who's like, oh, I mean, and it's I nothing against people who do take all
What is it?
the extra time to do extra stuff. Simply that, I this is not the part that is the fun for me. You know what I mean? I don't hate doing this, but this is not my fun. My fun is writing and my fun is acting. I don't do this for entertainment. I do this so that my show gets done, so that people get to hear my words. And that's where, and this is again why when people come to me and are like, "Oh, I have this script. Do you want this script?" I'm like, "No. I don't want to do any more of this work than I have to, because this I only do this so that my stuff gets done." And people are like, "But you do it so well." I'm like, "Yeah, because I don't want my stuff to sound like shit, but I don't want to do any more of it, you know." And a lot of people here, I go with my volume and my pop mute going la 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 la. But I mean, and that's it's it's just a thing, and it's nobody wants to do the hard part, and this is the hard part. Editing is. This is the time-consuming part that makes you go through all these steps. So this is the hard part of audio drama. And I mean, there's people who love it. There's people who do it, because they just have a passion for it. And that's great. But there's also nothing.
Page. Professor's line is what? Yes, these 5 cogs placed in precisely the proper order? Or am I missing something? I'm sorry, I was missing. Got it. Okay.
That there's nothing wrong with loving what you're doing when you're doing this, but
Yes, Father.
but for me it's like, I do this because I have to, because otherwise it just won't get done, and it won't get done as well as I can do it, if that makes sense.
Shh. Shh.
And and I don't hate doing it, but again, this is not something I do for fun. And anytime you've got large projects and stuff, and you're dealing with egos and actors and things, you find that there's 400 actors to every one stage manager.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you are so nuts. I like it.
So nobody will notice that you're not really
here. That's right.
And
yes, Father.
okay, so her lines repeat here. Might as well use the repeat. Oh. Anyway, I don't want to sound like I'm down on the whole process, just that, it is like everything else, there's people who are good at one thing and there's people who are good at multiple things, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily your favorite thing. I'm not sure if that made any sense at all. Oh well.
Someone is coming. Yes, Papa.
And scene. Alright. And then we get the professor's lines. Well, yeah, it's true. It's just that, I mean, this is also the part that takes the time. And that's something that a lot of people forget. Or that they just don't want to do. I mean, as I've pointed out several times, I've told people before, the people who come to me are like, I've got a script. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, no, but I'll teach you how to do it. And they're all like, no, I'll find somebody else. It's like, well, it's not that hard. As you can see, once you get it down, it's actually fairly simple. The problem is that, not everybody wants to even try.
Come and look, Astrid, dear. Come and look, Astrid, dear. Come and look, Astrid, dear.
And because people want to do the fun parts. They don't want to do the work parts. And that is often exactly why, it happens. It's because people, they don't want to take
See
on
this cog set?
the most...
See this cog set? See this cog set?
They don't want to have to learn something new just to be able to do what they want. I mean, how many writers want to actually have to publish stuff, to be the publisher as well? And how many people want to, it's the worky part, and it's just like, I do narrating audiobooks, and the marketing is giant pain in the ass.
These 5 cogs, placed in precisely the proper order, will make any of our clockwork automata able to...
I'm going to take his last one on these for the most part.
What? 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 What?
And, well, because I know what's going on in this scene, so I can skip through it a little bit. That's one of the reasons it's actually good to be the producer and the writer, because, again, as we've seen in other scenes, when I've had to do a workaround...
Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room? Do not worry, my dear. Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room? Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room?
Yeah, I'll use the first one. Because a lot of times, if I have to work around something, I can do that because I don't have to consult anybody about whether it would be okay to change the wording and things. Pardon me. It's not what I meant to do. Oh. No. Silly things. When they don't listen to you, it's just not getting it. Anyway,
Come
I'll
in.
get through the picking up the
I'm
lines
so
here, and then
glad
we'll
you were
put it
able
all
to come
together.
tonight. I have a new set of cogs for you.
I like that one. Well, let's see how this sounds.
I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cogs for you.
Let's take that. Now, I already cleaned all these before I put them into this, the file as is. So that's one reason I can zip through this. We did the mass cleaning where I did everything as I separated it out. And that
Line 50.
often tends to be the best way to do things because it's... then you have, once they're into these files, they've been cleaned already.
Ah. Oh.
It's got lots of monosyllabic lines here.
They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted. They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
There's a click.
They
in
are
there.
engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
There's a click right in here.
Order they must be in. Order they must be in. Order they must be.
I think that's it. This right here looks like an awkward cut. Anytime now, here's a super trick. A waveform usually is fairly smooth. It goes in waves rather than points. So if you see a point, a lot of times that's an awkward cut. Now, if you ever do have to cut words together on this sort of molecular level, what I'll always do, you can pull it so you've got it bigger and make it bigger. See, it shouldn't come to that point. And I think that's what's making that snapping noise, that sort of clicking noise. What I'm going to do is try to find where it crosses the center line and then where it crosses the center line the next time and try to smooth those out together as best as possible. It's not quite perfect. If you've clicked away and you're not sure you can click back, instead of trying to get back there, just undo and then do it again. See now, let's see if that got rid of it. Of course, maybe it won't, and I'll just be gibbering.
The order they must be inserted.
You see?
To show the order they must be inserted.
So, you can do I do that a lot on when I'm doing the narrations, because when you're editing lines together, a lot of times you've got to make a very careful edit to get the line to flow smoothly and not have a click or sound in the middle of it. And I hope that was even remotely clear. I can go back here. Wait, where was I?
Line 15.
Whoops, no, I don't want to go that far back.
They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
Not that one. Okay, let's just do that again just to show. If you listen to this right after must,
Order they must be.
you hear that click?
Order they must be. Order they must be.
And so I went down to find the click. Whoops. And I found this spiky bit, which looks like a poor edit. And then I took and went from where it crosses the line to where the next one crosses the line. Because what you want to create is a smooth flowing waveform. And to do that, it's easiest to match them up where they cross the center line. And if it's not perfect right away, you can just take now you couldn't see that, but I held the shift key and used a cursor key to highlight just a little bit more and then delete that to bring that together. And then we don't have that click anymore because I smoothed it out.
The order they must be inserted.
Anyway, just wanted to make that real clear what I did, because it's terribly clever and I wanted to show off. But I mean, really, truly, I mean, there are times when some tiny piece of knowledge like that is going to save a line or save your episode or your show or your story or whatever. And that makes a huge difference.
What is it?
So, that's why those kinds of things. And again, I've picked up stuff like that from trial and error, from just, doing it until I figured out why it wasn't working, kind of thing, which is, yeah, well, but I mean, also, part of it is seeing the patterns and seeing what works and trying a new thing, and also just being really, really stubborn.
They are engraved with numbers, see here, as usual, to show the order they must be inserted. Together they govern a complex series. Together they govern a complex series of actions, surprisingly complex, all things considered. Together they govern a complex series of actions, surprisingly complex, all things considered.
What is it?
What is it? What is it?
And
This allows one of the automatics to knit.
he sounds so thrilled with himself. I mean, the funny thing, of course, is here you've got the professor who really doesn't know what's going on, obviously, because Mr. Brown has come for more, sex toy things, and here he's got, oh, look, we can make them knit. Oh, yeah, that's just what my customers are looking for. Okay, now let me do some fixing up of the volumes. Bring this up just a bit. I mean, a lot of what I do with voluming stuff is just very eyeball-y. I mean, I'm like, okay, I want this to be a little closer to that, and because I know how much, going up 2 or 3 is gonna affect it. That's what I'm doing it by eye rather than anything else. It works for me. I'm just trying to get things relatively even to where I want them. So if we listen to this scene as is, let's say we put everybody here.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yes, Father.
See this cog set?
Very delicate.
Yes, these 5 cogs, placed in precisely the proper order, will make any of our clockwork automata able to...
Shh!
What?
Someone is coming.
Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room?
Yes, Papa.
I mean, I'll fix up the
Come in.
timing in a minute.
I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cogs for you.
Ah.
They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
Oh?
Together they govern a complex series of actions. Surprisingly complex, all things considered.
What is it?
This allows one of the automatics to knit.
So, take that. I'm going to take out some of this space here. Got sound things to do, but first things first, we need the background from the Clockworks, because that's where he's at. Oh. No. Blah. No. Crazy, crazy days. I'm going in here to steal the backstage sound of the Clockworks. Okay, fine, don't care. And that's generally very much off to one side.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yeah.
And, I might just make that more of a presence than it is otherwise. In other words, I might just add a second track. I've put it on the other side and I changed up the timing. So now we're hearing it everywhere.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yes, Father.
See this cog set?
Now, see, they might also have a fireplace. And in which case, I'll go over to Where did I have a fireplace recently? I'll just pull it from the effects collection here. It's got to be in here somewhere. Compiled fireplace. There we go. And since I usually put them over to the left, I'll make this fireplace to the right. Wrong keys. And I'm going to
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
stop. I don't want a low pass filter quite that much. Okay, so there's a complex background now for this. Actually, maybe I won't make it quite that far off. Let's see how it sounds. And this can be the professor's just overall background ambiance that I can then use consistently for, because we're going to come back here a few times throughout this episode. And I'll just mix it in the next sequence. Oh, no problem. Have a great one. We're here all the time. Now that I've got background noise, move that. I need to have a door here, a knock on the door, and then and some footsteps and a door opening. Right. Sorry, I spaced out there for a minute myself. Oh, I had all these, didn't I? Oh, good. There it is. Again, I hate when the computer just shuts down and suddenly you don't have all the things that you had open and you don't remember where they are. So I need, and this is from Mr. Brown's track. As my brain still keeps going, whenever life gets you down, Mrs. Brown. Oh, I need to get to karaoke. It's been a while. Because I've had a cold. Okay. I need a door open, and I need a knock, which I don't have here. When you paste things in, you can't always paste them in right before something because you don't know how big they are. You paste them in and then move them over to where you need them.
Come in. I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cog.
And I want these to actually be louder. Because we've got so much background noise.
Papa?
And I need the knock on the door. Now, I had a good knock recently in, I think, 5.1. That one. And, again, I've got to paste it in and then move it over because...
Come in. I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cog.
And then I can also put a door closing noise there. Hello, Bunny. Yes? Are you a good girl? Oh, I think you're lying. Cats always lie. Oh, I don't want to do that. I just want to bring the whole thing down.
Set of cogs for you.
Ah.
They are...
Okay. Yes, Bunny. Hold on. Cat needs a moment. What are you doing? You heard Mommy talking? See, you need to learn to talk on the microphone, sweetheart. Everybody wants to say hi. Why's Mommy got this big thing on her head? Ah, she's a good girl. But she always wants to get in when I'm recording. Last night it was so frustrating. It's like I'm recording and I can hear her scratching on the door, and then I have to stop because I can't record with the noise. She comes in and she wants to sit with me, but my chair's not big enough in the studio. Oh, you're a good girl. Say something in the microphone. Oh, none of them get enough attention. You know, cats never get enough attention, do you? Oh, yeah, every time I've got the attention to give you, you can't be bothered. They only want attention when you're busy with something else. That's the way it is. You gonna go up on the chair? Sweetie. Okay, there you go. I've got a nice high back leather office chair. Luckily, she doesn't seem to want to tear it to shreds like so many leather office chairs have been torn to shreds in the past. I mean, not here, but in general. Yeah, cats, you know, you can't live with them. You can't live without them sometimes. Okay. Now, let's see how this sounds.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yes, Father.
See this cog set?
Very delicate.
Yes, these 5 cogs, placed in precisely the proper order, will make any of our clockwork automata able to...
Now, this is one place where I want to make sure that time... Thank you, computer.
Clockwork...
I want to make sure the timing is right. Shh, type things, you always want to make sure you overlap a little bit if something is actually cutting something off. You don't want to have to be like, I will make us able to... shh. You know, you don't want to...
Able to... What?
Someone is...
You want to make sure it actually cuts it off. There was something I was reading on one of the Facebook pages about audio dramas where people are talking about how annoying it is that, you know, you get shows that are put together where people don't sound normal when talking because they talk and then the other person talks. And then the first person talks. And then the other person talks. You know, so there's like lag going on. And that's one reason it is really important to get your dialogue timed so it feels natural.
What?
Someone is coming.
Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room?
Yes, Papa.
And I want a little bit more space here.
Go on to your room.
Yes, Papa.
Come in. I'm so glad you were able to...
Now, you might want a little bit of space here.
Come in. I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cogs for you.
Ah.
They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
Oh?
Together they govern a complex series of actions. Surprisingly complex, all things considered.
What is it?
This allows one of the automatics to knit.
You know, and so... Oh, well, okay, bye-bye. But yeah, it's very important to time the dialogue so it sounds normal. you don't want large gaps, but at the same time you don't want everything just leaping on the back of what came before, because it's, you save that for when you need it. But yeah, it's one of those things that you always worry about, is like, oh, am I leaving too much time? Is it too tight? I mean, the best judge of that is just to listen through it and see how it sounds. I'm going to go ahead and just finish this up pretty quickly. I'm just moving these two down because it's faster than moving those three up. And then I'm going to put some room tone on the whole thing. And again, the reason that I do the room tone on a separate track, another one of my little experiments, is that it allows me to control it better, because I don't know what all the little dials and things mean. So I use the default. I use Room Machine. I don't want to mess with all these because I don't know what they mean. I suppose I could look them all up and stuff, but to me it's just easier to run the default, close it. I run and then listen to it.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yes, Father.
See this cog set?
Very delicate.
Yes, these 5 cogs, placed in precisely the proper order, will make any of our clockwork automator able to...
Shh!
What?
Someone is coming.
It smooths out, it creates this room sound, so it sounds like everybody's in the
Someone
same
is
room.
coming.
Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room?
Yes, Papa.
Come in. I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cogs for you.
Ah.
They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
Oh?
Together they govern a complex series of actions. Surprisingly complex, all things considered.
What is it?
This allows one of the automatics to knit.
Okay. And as I said, I'm going to also make a copy of the room tone here, which I will keep somewhere so that I can access it for other scenes. Because that also, by mixing them together, which I copied and mixed them at the same time. Whoops, wrong file. Here. It keeps them all identical in relation to each other. If I just copied the 3 of them individually and pasted them, these would all revert to center. But by mixing them first, everything stays in relation to each other where it is. And therefore, I've got this track down here is identical to these 3 tracks put together. It's a weird thing, but it works. I'm not keeping it here because that will mess up the sound of this scene, but I've pasted it into the footsteps one for now, and hopefully I'll remember what it is. Excuse me. And then this scene here is ready. I'm going to save it, mix it, copy it, and unmix it. I always make sure to unmix it before I leave the screen so that I don't forget to unmix it later. Because I don't want to save it wrong. I don't want to save it mixed, because if I have to go back to it... Mwah, mwah. Yeah, Guardian of Memories just said, I knew he was going to say that. I have precognition. Mwah, mwah. Funny. Oh, no. I'm going to episode 5. Finals. Open up my final file. And put it in here, because this scene actually goes between these two. We were just waiting for Mr. Brown's lines to be able to... Ow, my knee. Sorry, I just was cramped up. Mr. Brown's lines to be able to do this. So, let me listen to this musical transition real quickly.
Hell.
I'm going to tighten that up a bit. I think it is not...
I want to see the blackguard that did this brought to justice.
This one is too long. Okay, not the right... Okay, let's see here. What's this music? Okay, I'm gonna change these out because I'm not liking what I've got. I mean, these were just the order that they were in the last episode. They don't actually have anything to do with. I've been doing that just as a way to start, but I want to make sure I get the sound because it creates a different atmosphere, the different transitional music you use. Now this has way too much off flow, and I'm going to fade it out. I'm looking for something like from here that's going to come right off his words, because it's a very da-da-da kind of moment when he says, I want to see the blackguard who did this.
Justice.
Brought to justice. So we want the music to come right in there. Then we want to make sure that it also goes out right with Jane's words on the next scene.
Oh, that's some nice work. Would be lovely with a pale blue ribbon.
If I may make a suggestion, I know a young woman who lives nearby and might be better able to tell us something about the lady from her belongings.
I'll send for her.
Fields knows where it is. He found me there, and she knows him by sight.
Elizabeth.
Bloody hell.
You want
And then right here, I want, as she's the squeak and everything, I want the music to, the next music to come in. Now, over that. So let's see.
Bloody hell.
You want
Actually, even a little tighter than that.
Bloody hell.
You want
And then I need to fade in the background noise.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yes, Father.
See this cog set?
Very delicate.
Yes, these 5 cogs placed...
And then from this one back
Where
to
would such a lady go?
here, let's
The
see.
Laughing Chinaman.
Wait,
I could use this one then to get back. Let's see how this works. I mean, a lot of times I seem to play very fast and loose with my in-between music, but a lot of times it's because I already kind of know what I want.
surprisingly complex, all things considered.
What is it?
This allows one of the automatics to knit.
Oops, I need to fade out.
So, friend.
Fade that out. Cut this down a skosh. Fade it in. And
So, friendly native, where would such a lady go were she inclined to run off?
she probably has friends and...
And lastly, what's the next? And after this sequence, we're going into another Mr. Brown scene, which we haven't done yet, but that music works for me. I mean, because we've got some of the music sounds fairly frivolous, other of it sounds serious, some sounds like a full shift change, others isn't. And that's why it's important as you make and pick your in-between musics, your stings and things. Should we listen to this whole part so far? I don't know if anybody's here but you, Guardian of Memories. You want to listen to the whole thing? I gotta wait for the lag to catch up. La 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 la. Might as well save that so that I don't have to worry about it. I will listen to it, then we'll call this an episode. I'll just start from the end of the opening credits music. It's 5 minutes.
Had you been in this establishment prior to today, sir?
Of course not. It's simply not done.
You needn't condescend.
Was I? My apologies. Do go on.
Yes, sir. Please describe this Miss McAdams.
Oh, well, average height, light brown hair, very stylish, very pretty.
Did you notice anything in particular that might aid in identifying her?
Certainly not. One doesn't look at a woman on another man's arm that closely.
It's simply not done.
Inspector, may I offer a word of suggestion?
Continue.
I truly do not mean to come off as a... whatever it is that I am doing that seems to annoy you so fiercely. I presume it is a class issue?
You put things rather bluntly.
And I gather that you do not approve of all of this. Can we come to a compromise?
In what particular, sir?
Think on this. Were you called upon to investigate a murder among the Chinese or the Hindu,
Heaven forbid.
you would likely try and find someone among them who could translate for you and help you to understand any special motivations that might lie behind the crime.
Oh, that would be logical.
Inspector, I propose that, rather than think of this as a class issue, you consider the peerage as a foreign country. And I am offering my services as your friendly native guide.
Well, but like the Hindus or the Chinese, you might choose to hold back vital information.
Always possible, yes.
At least you are an honest Chinaman. And in return...
Daniel Gregory was not one that I would call a friend, but I have been acquainted with him for years, and I feel for his family. I want to see the blackguard that did this brought to justice.
Oh, that's some nice work. Would be lovely with a pale blue ribbon.
If I may make a suggestion, I know a young woman who lives nearby, and might be better able to tell us something about the lady from her belongings.
I'll send for her.
Fields knows where it is. He found me there, and she knows him by sight.
Elizabeth.
Bloody hell.
You want it? Not bloody.
Come and look, Astrid, dear.
Yes, Father.
See this cog set?
Very delicate.
Yes. These 5 cogs, placed in precisely the proper order, will make any of our clockwork automata able to...
Shh.
What?
Someone is coming.
Do not worry, my dear. Why don't you go on to your room?
Yes, Papa.
Come in. I'm so glad you were able to come tonight. I have a new set of cogs for you.
Ah.
They are engraved with numbers. See here? As usual, to show the order they must be inserted.
Oh?
Together they govern a complex series of actions. Surprisingly complex, all things considered.
What is it?
This allows one of the automatics to knit.
So, friendly native, where would such a lady go were she inclined to run off?
She probably has friends and possibly even family in town, but there's no way to know where.
There's no hiring exchange. The laughing Chinaman.
It is a very private sort of arrangement. Very few have connections.
You thought of something.
I...
Sir? Sirs, Miss, Jane is here. With maid.
Jane.
Just Jane?
And there we have it so far. And we're, probably just about almost halfway through the episode. Since we do have one other scene with where Jane and Annie show up that's mostly mixed. I think it needs effects. But we have a Mr. Brown episode first, since we were waiting on those in between. So, anyway, there we are for today, and I will say goodnight. And looks like most of my audience have gone to sleep already. But thank everybody for attending. And I'm going to wrap up. I hope I answered a couple questions for my YouTube person. And